Alright, we've gone to Japan, we've gone to France, we've also gone to Sweden, and this week we're going to Spain. This is the fourth week in a row of introducing new brands to you guys, although I have spoken about this particular brand in the past, Rosendo Mateu. I've spoken about number 1 and number 5 fragrances, but I've never really done a video on the whole brand as a whole. I've just featured the fragrances in various videos. But today we're going to talk about the Black Collection, a new collection of fragrances that were launched from Rosendo Mateu earlier this year. Those fragrances are Fresh Oud, there's also Incense Wood, and then there's also Sweet Rose. So I'm going to tell you about these 3 fragrances, and also you're going to have a chance at winning a full bottle of one of those worldwide if you are a subscriber of this channel from the entire world, thanks to the folks behind Rosendo Mateu. So if you're curious to learn about these 3 fragrances from the Black Collection from Rosendo Mateu, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian with Smelling Great Fragrance Reviews. That's right, today we're going to Spain. This is a fragrance house from Spain, and we've been to various different countries with the brands that I've spoken to you about for you the last couple of weeks, where I'm introducing new brands on the channel. We covered J-Scent, Floraiku, we've covered Crayon, and this week it's Rosendo Mateu, and it's the Black Collection from this house. But before we do all that, if this is your first time tuning into the channel and you still haven't subscribed to the channel, please click the subscribe button below, and also click the bell so that you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. So the fragrances that I've spoken about on the channel from this house are number 1, which is Bergamot and Tea, and number 5, which is a very, very sexy amber woody concoction. Those 2 fragrances are really, really phenomenal fragrances. Really love them, and as I said, I've featured them in various videos, and I think if you can get your hands on them, do, or if you can get a chance to get samples or something, do, because I recommend this particular brand. But now they have 3 new fragrances that are launched, that were just launched recently, and I'm going to tell you all about them. So those 3 fragrances once again are Fresh Oud, this one right here. There's also Incense Wood, and then there's also Sweet Rose. Can you guess which one is my first before finishing the video? I want to know if you guys know me enough to guess what I enjoy. So let's go ahead and start off with Fresh Oud. So Fresh Oud is a 2020 launch. The perfumer is Rosendo Mateu, which is also the name of the brand. And for this one, there's loads of different notes. But in the top, you've got bergamot, bitter grapefruit, cardamom, saffron, cinnamon bark. In the heart, jasmine, Bulgarian rose, and iris. In the base notes, oud, sandalwood, cedarwood, patchouli, amber, leather, cashmere, wood, vanilla, and white musk. So for me, the name is very, very appropriate for this. It's a fresh oud. So I guess I should also say fragrances like Tom Ford's Oud Wood I consider a fresh, spicy oud. This is kind of sort of in that ballpark. They don't smell alike. Just don't think that they're similar because I'm mentioning that fragrance. But in the end, I find this particular fragrance similar to that in its kind of styling. So it's a fresh oud, not very warm, spicy, although it has warm, spicy elements, but there's a freshness about it that makes it a little more easier to wear. This particular one, I'm going to spray it once again so I can get used to it. I do have to be honest with this one, there is an animalic touch in here. The animalic touch I think is coming from leather. The leather seems a bit on the animalic side, and not the oud, or it could be a combination of the oud and the leather. But with this particular fragrance, it's very much about oud and the grapefruit. This is the note that's giving us this freshness. But since grapefruit has a spicy edge to it, typically when, if you ever eat grapefruit, you get that zingy spiciness from it, almost like ginger. For some reason, I almost associate grapefruit with the zinginess of ginger. I find them sort of similar. So you get that here, but it gives you a very, very fresh, spicy edge, because with this particular fragrance, the oud and the grapefruit are working wonderfully together, because there's a very oudy, woody combination of the oud in contrast to that zingy, fresh spiciness of the citrus grapefruit. So those are what's running this particular fragrance or the show, but as I said, there is an animalic touch here, and I think it's coming from the leather. The leather seems a bit animalic for me, or it could be that there is leather, and the way the oud and the leather are working together makes a kind of a slightly animalic accord. It's not overly animalic, but it is there, so you might find it a little off if you're not into the idea of, you know, appreciating something a little on the animalic side. I do enjoy this one, and again, I brought up the Tom Ford fragrance Oud Wood. They're nothing alike, but I feel like it's kind of a similar idea, but they're going in different directions. So there's a fresh, spicy element to the fragrance. That's why it's appropriately titled Fresh Oud. So fresh oud basically means that, but don't think that it's a summer freshie, because this has some legs, it has some density, it has some strength. There's loads of musk in here, and loads of cashmere wood is also something I get. If you don't know what cashmere wood is, you should definitely check out some of my videos featuring this particular fragrance, cashmere and cashmere wood. I do pick that up a lot. And of course I also pick up some light rose and light jasmine and some cardamom. There is a cardamom element here as well, and this is where it kind of reminds me a little bit of Tom Ford's Oud Wood. Again, they're nothing alike. The ideas are similar. The conclusion with the fragrances, the end results are completely different, but similar idea of a more fresh, spicy oud rather than a really deep, dark, dense oudy oud, if that makes sense to you guys. Again, I do want to stress the fact that it is fresh, but it's also not like a freshie. Don't consider this to be like your summer freshie. It's not that. It has major strength, and it's intense. And again, as I said, I'm warning you with the animalic parts about it. There is some animalic touches here. So that is Fresh Oud. I'm going to tell you at the end which is my favorite, but I do enjoy that one quite a bit. So I forgot to mention that these are all eau de parfum concentration, and the concentration seems to be very intense, so a little goes a long way with these fragrances. There are really big, intense fragrance experiences. So they're in dark bottles in comparison to this original collection that featured the clear bottles. So I feel like what they're giving us with the dark bottles, they're darker experiences. Although the last fragrance, this particular one, the Sweet Rose, I don't think it's as dark as the first two. I feel like that could have been in the clear bottle collection, but it's definitely in the dark bottle collection. So with Incense Wood, that's this one right here. This is an incensey fragrance. It's basically a balsamic resinous experience with incense smoke. So with this one, you have at the top bergamot, cardamom, cloves, cinnamon. In the heart, sandalwood, patchouli, Brazilian rosewood. In the base, incense resins, tonka beans, amber labdanum, Madagascar vanilla, and white musk. So the idea of this fragrance is great. I love incensey fragrances, and this is not the kind of incense that I should say doesn't smell like church to me. There's frankincense in there, and you can pick up elements of that churchy incense, but there's a lot more going on that it almost goes into like a ambery direction with lots of incense and resins, if that makes sense to you guys. That's what I get with this fragrance, even though it starts off kind of fresh spicy with citruses, and then it kind of like develops and gets darker and darker and denser as the fragrance is drying down. So let's go ahead and quickly smell this one. I do also want to mention that the juice is kind of dark. I'm spraying it on white, and you could see the yellow or kind of slightly orangey color on here. So this is actually a great incense. I've spoken a lot about fragrances like Comme des Garçons Incense, Casbah by Robert Piguet. I guess the idea could be similar to those, but those go into a more churchy direction, especially Avignon from Comme des Garçons. This one definitely goes into a sweeter direction because it settles sweet, and I like that about it because I like sweet fragrances, I like ambery fragrances, and of course what's in the base? Amber, labdanum, Madagascar vanilla with white musk. So it's my kind of a fragrance. I like that about it. But for me, incense fragrances in general, I have to have I have to be in the mood to wear them, because it always associates, for me it always is associated with going to church. I was brought up Christian Orthodox, and we loved incense in that church, and frankincense was always burning. So even though I said to you guys it doesn't really act like churchy incense. It still reminds me of it because there's a major dose of frankincense in here, so lots of it, or incense is what I should say. The other thing I want to mention about incense wood is the fact that there's loads of tonka beans, and the tonka beans has this bittersweet kind of a quality to it, slightly almond nutty, bitter, a little tobacco-ish kind of hints, and a little ambery touches. So I feel like this fragrance is pretty awesome. Just for me, incense fragrances in general, I have to be in the right mood to wear them, because it's not necessarily that it's an acquired taste. It's just, if I'm in the mood for incense and smoky fragrances, then I would, wear those kind of fragrances. But I like the fact that this particular fragrance, Incense Wood, settles to a more sweet, slightly gourmand amber direction, which I really, really appreciate. So is this my favorite one out of the three so far? I'll let you know. But that is Incense Wood from Rosendo Mateu. That's the second fragrance from the Black Collection. And the third and the final fragrance in the Black Collection from Rosendo Mateu is Sweet Rose, this one right here. And this particular fragrance, once again, is a 2020 creation. These are eau de parfum concentration fragrances, and they're created by Rosendo Mateu, who the brand is named after. With this particular fragrance, at the top you've got Calabrian bergamot, green leaves, citrus fruits. In the heart you've got Bulgarian rose, Turkish rose, geranium, strawberries, red berries, passion fruit. In the base notes, cedarwood, Indian sandalwood, patchouli, vetiver, white musk, and vanilla. So I just want to give you a clue now. This is not my favorite kind of rose fragrance. So out of the three, this is my least favorite. It's just not my cup of tea. For me, the fragrance goes into a candied rose direction. And even though I love roses, don't get me wrong, it's one of my favorite flowers of all time, this is not my favorite kind of rose. And I feel like it goes or leans a little feminine. Even though I don't mind wearing feminine fragrances, I love roses, I love candied fragrances, I love fruity fragrances. But for some reason, I guess next to the other two, which are like pretty powerful and potent experiences, this one kind of leaned a little feminine, kind of like was the, like the little sister of the two, or the child of the two parents or something. So I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but for me this one didn't do it for me. But I'll tell you a little bit about how it works, because the fragrance starts off citrusy, but I think the citruses are not lasting too long, because it immediately goes to the rose in the heart with all the fruity touches. Some of the other things that I felt like this smelled like was a jam, like a strawberry jam with lots of berries and roses thrown in as well. But what's really driving this one is perhaps the combination of the passion fruit with the strawberries and then the rose, kind of a combo, because there's a major kind of passion fruit like quality to it, and I love the flavor of passion fruits. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love strawberries as well, but it just felt like a berry compote with roses, and then it settles to a woody fragrance at the end, because as I said, the top notes didn't really last a long time. It just immediately, for me, it sprays on and immediately goes to the heart, where we're experiencing the rose and the fruits together, and then slightly, bit of geranium as well, giving it a slight aromatic direction. But I felt like it's almost like a fruit compote with lots of roses thrown in, which, like I said, I like the idea of that kind of a fragrance, and I've eaten it before as a food item, but for me, it just didn't do it for me. But some of you might be into it. But when the fragrance was settling, it kind of became a more interesting fragrance for me, because now it's combining some of the notes of the sandalwood and the patchouli and a bit of the white musk. There is some vanillic touches in here, maybe some light vetiver touches as well. But for me, the fragrance it mostly is about the fruits with the rose. So again, it's not my favorite, but I mean, one of you might be a fan of this kind of fragrance. But the thing is, this actually layers wonderfully with this fragrance. So fresh oud and sweet rose, they do layer wonderfully together, because as I said, this one has those slight animalic touches, and it's very, very woody. And with this one being a sweet rose, so it's a nice contrast. Whereas this one's the savory and this one's the sweet, and you're kind of like balancing out the savory and the sweet together and making an interesting fragrance. But as a fragrance on its own, it wasn't my cup of tea. But should I tell you what my favorite is now, since it's between these two? So it's between these two, and it's Fresh Oud is my favorite of the two, but this is really, really close behind, if not, you know, tied, because I really love the way this smells. I like incense in fragrances, but I also like it to go sweet, and this one does go sweet with the ambery touches and the vanillic touches in the base. But I like this Fresh Oud because not only do I like the name, but I also like the fresh spiciness of it, even though it's an intense fragrance. The name Fresh is there, but it doesn't act fresh in a sense where you're wearing a fresh fragrance for summer. It's just the experience of the oud here. It's a fresh oud. Hope that makes sense to you guys. So this is definitely my favorite, but the Incense Wood is definitely really close behind. And I'm sorry, I don't care for this one. It's just not my cup of tea or my kind of fragrance, but there are fans out there probably of this one and they would appreciate it. So those are my thoughts on these 3 fragrances from Rosendo Mateu's Black Collection. And if you guys have a chance at testing out some of their other fragrances, I do highly recommend number 1, which is a Bergamot tea. It's really, really wonderful, fresh, very, very fresh fragrance. I love wearing it in the summertime. And then number 5, I think it's a great scent to wear in the fall because it's ambers and woods, but the ambers, I think there's also musk in here. The ambery part about this fragrance is not so syrupy and molassesy, where some of you might not like too much sweetness and ambery, molasses, syrupy kind of fragrances might dig something like this because the combination of the amber and the woods together and the musk makes it very, very sexy. I really love it. So those are the other 2 fragrances that I have from this collection. So now on to the giveaway. Here's what we're going to do. This is a worldwide giveaway thanks to Rosendo Mateu, the folks behind the brand. So, in order to participate in this giveaway, I want you to tell me which fragrance sounds the best to you and why. You must tell me which fragrance sounds great to you and why. And also, please let me know your country, and if you are from the USA, please let me know what state. Please follow these directions. And other than that, guys, make sure you're subscribed. I've been having a lot of cheaters actually lately, a lot of cheaters trying to cheat the system with my giveaways, and I can totally figure out that there's cheating going on. Like some of you write to me and say you won the prize, and I'm like, no, you didn't. And then I asked this person, I've had this come up many times before, and I finally started doing screen captures and not deleting emails of people trying to claim prizes that are not their prizes. So if you're going to try and cheat the system, you might not be able to win anything. So try and prove that you are definitely subscribed and you are participating, and please follow the directions so that you can qualify. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video on Rosendo Mateu's fragrances from the Black Collection. If you have any questions or comments, please do list below. Otherwise, please like this video, please share it. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.